Okay, so hopefully this is pretty tricky. I think I'm recording. It looks like I'm recording. Okay, so we're going to start today on standard deviation. Now, yesterday we talked a little bit about the two standard deviation formulas. So what I want you to know is those aren't not going to be the only standard deviation formulas you're going to learn. You're going to learn lots of them. One of the tricky parts of this class is knowing when to use which formula. I'm going to show you lots of the same thing with different formulas. So just as a reminder, we've got sigma equals the square root of the sum of xi minus mu quantity squared over n minus 1. And I've also got s equals, oh actually, that's over n. This one's the sum of xi minus x bar squared over n minus 1 square rooted. Okay? So I'm going to teach you some new ones today. And I am going to give you actually a formula sheet for the test tomorrow. So basically it's the same thing that you've got in the back of your book. This thing that folds out here. That's what I'm going to give you tomorrow. So we're going to reuse this for every single test. So please do not write on it. I will hand them out. I will collect them. We will use them for every test and probably some quizzes from here on out. So just keep that in mind. All right, so I've got a new formula for you. Let me see if I can find it here. This is for grouped data. And the formula is, so for x bar, okay, you're familiar with finding the mean. This is for grouped data. Grouped data. X bar equals the sum of xi fi all over the sum of f sub I. Okay? So that's our new formula we're learning today. And we're also going to learn our standard deviation, which I can't believe I didn't write on there. But it is, here, I'm going to have to borrow that because I don't remember that one either. So the one that you're more likely to use is S equals the sum of xi minus mu quantity squared times f sub I all over the sum of f sub I minus 1. And of course we have one for the population as well, which is, well, they've got a bunch of different formulas. This is the one I like to use, although you can use any one you like. The sum of xi minus mu squared times f sub I all over the sum of f sub I. Okay, so very similar. As you can see, we're dividing one, we subtract one here, this one we don't. Okay, only real differences. Exactly right. Yeah, it's just the difference between a sample and a population. All right, so here's what I'd like to do. Let's go ahead, and if you go to assignments, and if you go to in-class worksheets, down at the bottom, and we're going to go to worksheet 3.3, and we're going to open this up. Okay, so go to the first one that talks about the weighted mean. Okay, so we're going to learn how to do the weighted mean here. So if you want to follow along here. Okay, so let's say you're trying to decide if you want to invest with a company and you've got this 3-year rate of return and they just give you a summary of the data. So you don't have the actual stocks. You've only got this summary. And you say, hey, I want to find the mean rate of return. So all you have here is this information. They gave you a brochure and they told you, oh, you should invest with us. And so you want to know what is the mean rate of return for this company. Okay? So we're going to use this first formula here. X bar equals the sum of xi times the frequency divided by the sum of the frequency. Okay? So you can see here we've got 6 stocks here that were between 10 and 12%. 14 that were between 12 and 14, 10 between 14 and 16, etc. Does that make sense? Okay. So what you can do is you can see here we have a total of 40 stocks. Okay. So now, in order to do this, you need to figure out what is your x sub I. Well, x sub I is a little bit hard because I don't know. Well, we need to figure out, I've got more than one number here. What's the midpoint between 10 and 12? It's 11, right? So this is 11. What's the midpoint between 12 and 14? 13. Okay. 14 and 16? 15. You noticing a pattern here? We're going to copy that down. So I've got all of the midpoints there. Does that make sense? So according to my formula, I need to take each of the midpoints here times the frequency. Okay, that's how you read that formula. So in this case, I'm going to take the midpoint times the frequency. So 11 times 6 is 66. Okay, I'm going to copy that down for all of these formulas. Okay, now what is this telling me to do? Find the sum. So I'm going to find the sum of this column here. Auto sum right there. So I've got 592 in the numerator, and I've already added up my frequencies here. So my x bar simply equals my numerator, which is 592, divided by a denominator, which happens to be 40. So I now know that I have a mean rate of return of 14.8%. Does that make sense? Okay. Now let me ask you a question. I'm going to pick on one of you guys is Tyler. I can't remember which one. That one's Tyler. Tyler, do you remember how to make a histogram? Okay. See if you can tell me what to do. Nope. Okay, what data should I highlight? The frequency column. Is there anything else? Well, should I highlight the total on there, do you think? No, that would be a bad idea. Some of you are going to make that mistake tomorrow. You've been warned. Okay? Don't put the total in there. And I need my classes here, my groups. Okay? Then what? You go into insert. The 2D bar graph right here. And then what? How do I do that? They are in order. So how do I put them together? Quick layout. You go to quick layout here. Then you pick that one right there. Okay. So let me ask you all a question. First of all, what should I put for this down here? I'm going to pick on Trevin. What'd you say? Well, for the title or for down here? So I would put rate of return here. Okay. And then what about here? How about number of stocks? Frequency is okay, but I like it. If you can be a little more specific, it makes more sense because people will be like frequency. And then what do I put here? Yeah, 3-year rate of return on mutual funds. Okay. Now, Ashley, how would you describe that histogram? You'd say it's right skewed, perhaps, maybe even bimodal, right? Okay, but yeah, definitely right skewed, perhaps bimodal. You gotta thing there. Okay, so now, would you say that the 68, 95, 99 rule would apply to this?
No.
Probably not. Okay, so we would use whose inequality? Chebyshev. He's a Russian guy. Okay, so Chebyshev's inequality would probably apply here. All right, so in order to figure out Chebyshev's inequality, we just have to figure out our standard deviation. Now that's going to be the trickier part. Okay, so let's look at our formula here. Why is this thing doing that? Anyway, I guess it doesn't matter. Okay, so to use my formula here, we have to decide, am I using a sample or a population? Let's assume this is a sample. This is the one you're more than likely to use. Okay, so we need to figure out what x sub I minus mu is. What do you think x sub I minus mu is in this x sub I minus mu? Nope. So x sub I represents your data, right? So what are we representing for my first data point? Between 10 and 12%. It's going to be my midpoint, right? Because I can't put a range of numbers here, so I'm going to use the midpoint again. Okay, so that's going to be my data, okay? So what's going to happen here is x sub I in this case represents 11, my midpoint. We're just going to take the middle of that range, and I'm going to subtract off the mean, which is my x bar. Oh, I should have called that mu, I guess. Well, whatever. So they don't do a very good job of distinguishing between populations and samples. Or I guess we could assume this is, but they got mu in both of them. Anyway, it's the mean. Okay? Do I need to F4 any of this stuff? The mean I need to F4, because I always want to subtract off that 14.8%. So I'm doing 11 minus 14, which is negative 3.8. Then I'm going to do 13, okay? So I'm going to copy this down. Okay. Now, by the way, I told you I did a big mistake here. It's really easy to copy that down to here, okay? This is why I recommend that you should always give yourself a space so you don't make that mistake. You don't want to be using the total in there, okay? All right, so now, according to my formula, what's my next step? Square it. So I got to square it, okay? So I'm going to take that number, I'm going to raise it to the second power. Do I need to F4 any of this? No. Okay, so I'm going to square all those. What's the next step? Multiply by the Fi. What's the Fi? The frequency, right? So it's going to be 14.44 times, what do you say? Oh, I know Samantha's name. I pick on her too much. What's your name? Sean. What are we multiplying this by? No idea? You don't see any frequency? I can't hear you. 6. Very good. Do I need to F4 any of these? No. Okay. I'm going to copy that down. Okay, so I've got most of the numerator here. What's my next step? We need to find the sum, right? So I need the sum here, the sum of all of this column here. So I'm going to auto sum that. Okay. Then I'm going to do what? Divide by the frequency. So I'm assuming this is a population. The sum of the frequency. Okay. And then, in this case, the 406 is going to be divided by the 40. Okay, so then, what do I do at the last step? So this is actually what's called the variance. And then I'm going to do the standard deviation. which is the square root of the variance. So I can say here, now let's think about this for a minute. Do the numbers make sense? So I'm saying that my mean rate of return is 14.8% and my standard deviation is about 3.18%. Does that make sense? Does that seem reasonable given this data? Okay, so last thing I just want to mention before I let you guys go. Thursday I mentioned that you could find the standard deviation with a special formula. Can you do that with group data? No. This is the only way to do this. Okay? All right. So this is going to be on the test, well, really Wednesday. I would give you a quiz on this tomorrow, but I'll just give you a test instead. How's that? Okay. So test tomorrow. Written test will be in class. These sort of calculations will be more saved for the computer. But you probably could figure out the mean. I probably could let you do that one on a written test tomorrow. But this more than likely this will be on the computer test. This sort of stuff. Okay. So you got 2 days for that. So test tomorrow. You want me to put this up there? I can post this up. I will also try to put the sound together with the. Hopefully it's synchronized well. It might be off a little bit. And so written test is tomorrow. Everything up through 3.3.